In this episode of the Locked On NBA Big Board podcast, we're going to shift gears. And me and my brother James, known on Twitter as Draft Junkie James, we're going to share our thoughts on team building and veteran leadership. Stay tuned. Big shout out to each and every person that has made the Locked On NBA Big Board podcast your first listen of the day. And this episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with the promo code Locked On. That is prizepicks.com. Promo code is Locked On. What's up? I am your host, Rafael Barlowe, the director of scouting for NBA Big Board and the founder of NBA Draft Junkies. And my guest today is none other than my brother James. James, what's going on?
What's up, man?
Nothing much. All right. I decided that you were the best person for this because we may share some similar thoughts about youngins going to the NBA with no vet leadership. And it's crazy because I want to say it was Friday. I let out a series of tweets just kind of sharing my thoughts about the Houston Rockets. And I didn't think they had like strong veteran leadership on the team. And I had mentioned how if I were running a young team, which is like a goal of mine, the type of vets I would have. And then not even 2 days later, Austin Rivers, maybe he was reading my tweets. I think that was probably it. Maybe
Probably
my tweets. Nah, I'm joking, but he made a quote. He didn't hold back on the Rockets. His exact quote was, "Someone needs to teach KPJ and Jalen how to play the right way." You know what I mean? They need those vets. I like those guys. They're super talented. They can really score. They need someone to help them take that next step. So obviously he doesn't think Eric Gordon is being that vet. Now, what do you see in Houston that you would change?
Eric Gordon is supposed to be that vet. And it's funny that, all this ties together. I saw there was an interview with Eric Gordon and they asked him, forget what they asked him, but like he just said nothing. Like he like brushed off the question that the reporter had asked him, and it just looks like, a lack of veteran leadership on that team. It's like, who do the young guys look to for guidance? Who like keeps them, keeps everybody settled? Who rights the ship? And we talked about it. I know you sent that tweet off, and I had mentioned like the New Orleans Pelicans situation and how they had Garrett Temple, who's been around the block several times, been a role player his whole career, and they also have CJ McCollum, who's in his early 30s, who's been around the block. So that helps guys like Zion. It helps Brandon Ingram. So we just got to talking. It's like, who is that guy in Houston? It's supposed to be Eric Gordon, but who else is it? Who do they look to? So,
well, I think Gordon, and I'm just speculating here, he wants to go to a contender. He wants to play. He still feels like he has something to give on the court. I don't know why the Rockets are holding out for him or still holding on to him. I mean, I read that they were looking for like a first round pick, but it seems to me, and again, I could be totally wrong, that he just does not want to be there. And I can totally understand it from his perspective, why he wouldn't want to be there. That's why I think it's important.
I'm not there to babysit.
Yeah. And that's why I think it's important that when you're building a young team, you have to have vets that understand their role, guys that are willing to accept that role. So I look at the Jazz, for example, and you have Mike Conley and Rudy Gay, two ultimate professionals. Not saying that Eric Gordon isn't, but they've accepted the role. I remember talking to a Jazz official before the season when, they hit the reset button. And I was like, does Conley want to be there? And he says, oh yeah, he's all in. which is important. He's all in. He's been a vet. He is like my perfect vet. So when I think of like a veteran, like if I were building a young team, and with the way the NBA is, I mean, there's roster spots. Even though a lot of people say they're pushing vets out the league, I'm saving 2 to 3 roster spots for a vet. And the vet I'm looking for is a guy that's probably in his mid-30s. I need a vet that's married, has a family, a wife and kids, but I need him to be cool enough to where he's invited, he's in the loop with the players, he may know their music, he's still cool enough to where he knows everything that's going on, but at the same time, he has the respect to where he can put his arm around a guy's shoulder and be like, hey, you need to get to practice early. You need to do this. And I look back at when Al Harrington was a rookie, he stayed with Antonio Davis. Like, he needed that. And I don't see Houston has that. So my question to you is, you got a young team and you are the GM. What vets are you picking for your team?
So again, you want somebody that's been around the block, has seen roles, different roles, who understands the game, and who is okay with being there to as a mentorship. So you talked about Mike Conley, and also off the camera, yeah, talked about Rudy Gay being like helpful in Utah. You think about like Jeff Green in Denver. There was a video circulating around about they played an Usher song um, from, I forget off the top of my head, and like he sang it, and Bones Highland was like, I don't know what that is, but like at the same time, Jeff Green still dunks on you every 2 weeks, like he's out there, he's a part of the team. If I'm the Rockets, personally, I look at, again, it could be my personal favorite bias, but I like Joe Johnson in the old man Udonis Haslem role for them. You think about Joe Johnson, he's an all-star, he's a max contract player. And then when Joe Johnson got old, he turned into a role player. He turned into minutes here, minutes there guy. So like, and at the same time, even though he's 41, 42, he's still in great shape, he's still competitive, he still competes. And like he could be like the mentor to a Jalen Green who needs to improve his shot selection, who needs to see the floor better. So yeah, I look at guys like that who are older, but then like the active guys like the Jeff Greens, the Rudy Gays, those kind of guys are somebody I would try to keep on my roster. Think about Al Horford; he's like the uncle in that Celtics team. So guys like that,
yeah. My favorite would be like PJ Tucker. I know he's still able to compete on a contender, but if I'm like Houston, and let's say next year, I don't know, PJ has a multiple year deal, but let's say Houston is in the same position 3 years from now, which could totally happen. I mean, some of these rebuilds don't always happen overnight. The minute PJ is no longer a rotation player, I'm like, hey, I need you on my young team. And you may ask me, well, why PJ Tucker? PJ Tucker to me is the perfect role model vet because let's keep it 100. He's fly. He got all the fly sneakers. He still wear the chains. He still, got the car collection. He still, he may be hanging out with Meek Mill. He's still very in tune with his younger teammates. But at the same time, he's a guy that, in my opinion, has maxed out every single ounce of his talent. He's overachieved. You don't go from playing, I think he played in Europe like 8 years or something like that. He played in Europe for a long time. He knows what it's like to ride buses instead of private planes. And he's where he's at because he had to be an excellent professional. And even when he was trying to get back in the league, he didn't come in the league with like big money. So he had to be a professional to stick. He had to come in and play a role, rebound, be physical. knock down corner threes until he got some type of job security. While a young guy that was drafted in the first round, especially a top 5 pick, he don't know anything about fighting for a roster spot. And usually they're given jobs because that whoever the GM is, he's not going to want his top 5 pick to not play. He's going to give them the most opportunities to fail. So that's why I think having a guy that has, kind of made a living because he's had to like overachieve. He's had to squeeze out all of his talent to play in the NBA in your mid to late 30s. You have to be a great vet. You have to know how to take care of your body. And I think that's what a lot of teams are not necessarily a lot of teams. I know a couple of teams that I feel personally are missing that type of veteran leadership.
Let me ask you this. How much of, we'll just call him the OG, how much of the OG role can your coach play? So you look at like, we talked about the Pelicans. Willie Green is an OG, right? I'm watching this Magic Kings game. Who's their veteran? So do you say Jamal Mosley is the OG on that team? Because again, he's been around the block. He can relate to the guys somewhat. How much of a role can the coach play?
All right, I'll answer that question after I talk about Prize Picks. And if you're wondering what is Prize Picks, all you have to do is pick 2 to 6 players, and if they will go score more or less than their Prize Picks projection, you can win up to 25 times your money on any entry. There's no competing against other people. It is just you versus the projections available. Prize Picks offers projections on any sport that you want, which includes the NBA, NFL, Major League Baseball, NHL, college football, college basketball for men's and women, even WNBA. Entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. It is that easy. It is safe and fast withdrawals, and it is currently operational in 30 states and our buddies north of the border in Canada. So download the Prize Picks app or go to prizepicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports. If you are a first-time user, you can receive $100 instant 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with a promo code locked on. If you deposit $100, Prize Picks will give you $100. If you deposit 50, Prize Picks will give you 50. So do not forget to enter the promo code locked on at sign up for instant deposit match up to $100. Once again, you're listening to the Locked On NBA Big Board Podcast. This is your host, Rafael Barlowe, with my brother, James Barlowe. James asked me a question: how much does a coach play a role? And I do think the coach plays a role. Willie Green is an excellent example. I remember I lived in LA around the time he was there with the Clippers. And someone mentioned to me that when he left, the year after he left, there may have been some issues in the Clippers locker room. And one of the guys mentioned that Willie Green was kind of like the glue that really held that group together, because he was just the ultimate professional. And so when I look at Willie Green, I knew immediately, like, based off the way this particular person was talking about Willie Green and his impact on the Clippers, I knew that he was going to be a coach, like, right away. And I think he went to the Warriors after that, and now he's the head coach in New Orleans. And I definitely think he played a role in their team building situation. And if you look at the Pelicans, they have, you got your vets like CJ. CJ's the ultimate vet to me, in a sense, because not only is he may not be like a superstar in a sense, but he's a star. He has $100 million contract, but he was a guy that was not like highly recruited coming out of high school. He was, we've all seen a picture where he looked like he was like 5'2", 85 pounds. And he went to a mid-major. So there's definitely a certain type of chip on his shoulder and a certain type of, I guess, professionalism, I want to say, for a guy that just didn't have anything handed to him. Right. And those are guys that I would have on my team if possible. You may not be able to get all that rolled into like one of your top 2 or 3 players like you have in New Orleans, but Garrett Temple is a guy that is, that's his role. that is his role to be that vet leader. So I'd like to answer your question. I think Willie Green understands that, and so he's going to put together a team that has those type of guys on there. What is your thought on Pat Beverly? Pat will be one of my guys. If Pat can't play, Pat's gonna be on my team because he's gonna pick up full court in practice.
I was just thinking about Patrick Beverly. I think there was a lot of antics with Patrick Beverly, but like again, if I'm Houston, that's who I want because he's gonna get guys to play hard. You could tell
he has more value on a younger team than he does with the Lakers.
Yeah, and then you can obviously see he had an impact on Minnesota last year. Just because like he brought it. And while a young guy like Anthony Edwards is, brash or whatever you want to say, like to have Patrick Beverly backing him up means like everything to him. And you can tell that it meant everything to that team. But yeah, Patrick Beverly would be like, as you said, like he has more value now at 34 on a younger team than he does on an older team, just because, the skills are not what they were last year. But if I'm Houston, yeah, he to me, he's 34. He has 3 more years left as an OG in the NBA.
I think hey man, as long as you're doing your job, because he's a guy that I think could be the role player that's a culture setter. And Pat's story is crazy. I mean, played in Russia, had to buy out his contract to play for the Rockets, came to the Rockets with a non-guaranteed deal. So that type of dude, when he got to training camp or when he got his opportunity with Houston, he was probably the first person there at practice. He's probably one of the last to leave. He hustled in every drill. And I remember a former player told me that he said that he was on a team, and the player that he's referring to is Scotty Brooks. Remember the coach, Scotty Brooks? He said Scotty Brooks went 100% in every layup. He said every drill.
Glass, right?
Huh?
He was slapping glass in the layup line like super hard or something like that.
No, he was just saying like, like when practice first starts where you're just kind of doing layups to warm up, he was like, man, he was doing layups at game speed. He was jab stepping, game speed, everything at game speed. And he said they kind of laughed at him like, man, who's this, this dude? But he said the guy, Scotty Brooks, ended up making the team because he knew that he didn't have the talent or he wasn't more talented than some of the guys that were competing for the same roster spot, but he just knew that he had to use professionalism and going hard to his advantage. So I said all that to say this: the guys like Pat Beverly, the guys like PJ Tucker that came to the league, like not as highly touted, that had to fight for everything, that professionalism, that mindset probably has, I believe, carried them to playing into their mid-30s. There's not a lot of guys left playing in their mid-30s. And those are guys that I would use as examples. Thad Young is another guy because I would want culture setters. Now, if you are Charlotte, let's have a little fun here. You are the Charlotte Hornets, and you decide to bring back. The roster's pretty much the same, but you got a couple open roster spots next year. What type of veterans, or do you have some veterans? And let's say there are free agents. What veterans are you bringing to that team?
Ideally, I would like to bring in a veteran point guard because your best player is your point guard.
Kimba would be my guy. They need to do that right now.
They need to do that before the season started.
Yeah.
Like Kimba would be perfect. Kimba has seen it all. He's been the man in Charlotte. He was the face of the franchise. I think that would be perfect for LaMelo. And not to, who knows what happens, but maybe some of the off the court issues, don't happen or aren't as severe as what has happened in Charlotte. Because again, you look down that bench and it's just like,
who's the man?
That's a lot to have happen to one franchise.
Yeah.
putting guys, off the court. So it's like I don't understand why Kemba's not there right now.
Yeah.
That'd be
Kemba
perfect.
should be there right away. He can be the perfect mentor to Melo. He's been the man there. He knows the city. And he is another thing I think just people don't understand. Kemba was a small guard that lasted a while. When you're a small guard and you last as long as he did, it's something in there that allows you to stick. So yeah, Kemba would be perfect there. All right, we'll finish this question, but I want to talk to the audience about BetOnline because BetOnline is your number one source for betting info, stats, news, and analysis. You can get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there, from pro football to college bowl season, which as of right now, it looks like TCU is getting smacked around. And then you have basketball. They even have the World Cup. Everything is at betonline.net. And if you love sports podcasts, you can even find those at BetOnline as well. It is the fastest and the easiest way to get your betting info. So head to the website today and use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline is where the game starts. And also, for those of you who are worried about doing your taxes, I suggest you go to turbotax.com and do not do your taxes. Go to TurboTax. Let TurboTax do them. Meet an expert who will do them for you, because TurboTax has the experts who can help relieve you from the stress of taxes and file for you, so you do not have to do your own taxes. And TurboTax is advising you to not do your own taxes because people are messing up, people are getting audited. So go to TurboTax. And with TurboTax, you get a 100% expert guarantee, and an expert will do your taxes from start to finish so you can relax. So you're basically done with your taxes right now because you don't have to do them. TurboTax will do them for you. Go to TurboTax. And again, do not do your taxes. Visit turbotax.com to learn more. Full service products only. A video meeting while expert does your taxes is required. So see the details at turbotax.com/guarantees. All right, last segment, Rafael with my brother James, and we talked about the Charlotte Hornets. Now, if I'm Charlotte, and I know Udonis Haslem has said this is his last year, Charlotte probably doesn't have the cap room. So maybe this is not a good example. I'll use Houston. If I'm Houston, I think they might have like $44 million in cap space. I'm calling Mr. Haslam, saying, hey, I know you wanted to end your career with Miami. I know you got plenty of bread because you've been chilling like the last 7-8 years, collecting $2 to $3 million. So that's really like $20 million you've made chilling. But hey, I need, how much you need? 5 million, 8, 10? I need you to come here to Houston, and I need you to set the tone. I need you to create a culture, because even if you win the lottery and you get Wembanyama or you get Scoot, you still need someone to set the culture. You need someone to get in KPJ's face if he shoots a contested step back three with Jabari Smith wide open or Şengün wide open. I mean, I even heard, and I could be wrong here, someone said that Jabari Smith, who's, being a competitor, yelled at John Lucas to take Şengün out the game.
I saw that too.
So, and I'm like, all right, as a rookie, yeah, I mean, if you're balling, or if people like you, they're going to say, oh man, that's just him being a competitor. But at the same time, if he feels like he's the leader and he feels like he has the power to yell at the coach to take her player out, that means it is a mess over there.
But hold on. So, and this is why you need a leader. So it works both ways. Yeah, you can yell at me because I, missed a defensive assignment, but do you get to get yelled at because you're shooting 31% from the 3-point line and you're not shooting the ball well? I mean, how does that work?
And Laurie had 49 like the next night.
yeah. So it's like, but I don't know. Here's my thing though with Haslam, right? So like Haslam is Miami's from Miami, so like that position works for him perfectly. So if I'm Jalen Green, KPJ, why am I listening to Udonis Haslam?
Why?
Like,
Because he
what
got
can he tell? What can he tell me about shot selection if I'm KPJ? So
he's
to me, I feel like your OG needs to fit the role of, or had used to be, what your best players or who you're building around, what they are. I think that's kind of easier in that example. Because I mean, like, if I'm KPJ, I'm like, man, look, old dude, like, you telling me not to shoot step backs when you shot 15-foot short corner jumpers your whole career? Like, we don't even play like that anymore. Like,
he's
I
got
get what you are in Miami, but it's like, the OG in one hood ain't the OG in another hood.
he's got enough juice and enough money in his bank account to where if he snatched somebody up by their jersey, he ain't worried about no fine or no
I get
penalty.
it, but
I
this ain't Miami. This is Houston.
yeah, but I think he can do it everywhere because he just commands that type of respect. He's another guy that, I mean, for him to play 20 years, remember, he was fat. A lot of people don't remember he was fat.
And
He
man, he
went
told a story.
overseas.
He told a story on, I forget which podcast, and he said that he didn't set his clock to French time. He was on American time because he was like, I'm not playing here. I'm not gonna get used to playing over here. So he said he wasn't sleeping because he never adjusted his body clock or his physical clock. And
Yeah,
that's crazy to even hear because, like, you know,
but it's a
you need sleep.
mentality. It's
But
a
right.
mentality that a guy like a Jalen Green or a guy that has been praised probably doesn't necessarily have because he's so talented. Udonis had to go overseas. He had to change his body. And those are the guys that I want to be my vet leaders. A guy that has maximized all of their talent. Thad Young is a guy. I mean, Thad Young was super talented. He's the first round pick. And I know there's a video circulating, but Thad Young is played a long time in the NBA. I don't think there's probably, and I can't think of what class he was in off the top of my head. There's probably not 5 guys in his class that are still playing. He
That
is,
he got some great hands too. That dude, if he sees it, he's going to touch that basketball. He's going to get deflections and steals, but he can still play. I was going to
but
say,
he's a guy that I like because not only is he very well respected, but he can relate to younger guys because he has Team Thad, his AAU program,
right.
which he's very active. I've done some video stuff for Team Thad. Some of his former players are in the NBA, so he's still connected. He's still like traveling with teenagers. Like, I mean, how many guys that are gazillionaires in a sense that will spend their summer traveling with their youth team? So I mean, you're around 15, 16, 17-year-old kids at that time. So you definitely got to know a little bit of what's going on. You know who whatever whoever a rapper is and all that. So I think that has helped him relate. So he's a guy that if I'm Charlotte or Houston, I'm trying to either, if he's a free agent, I'm trying to sign or I'm trying to make a trade for him because his value is not all about what he does on the court. His value sets the standard or sets the culture for down the line. And I just think that is very, very important, especially when, you're drafting these teenagers. So I look at this year's draft, and I know people probably think I'm crazy, but I look at this year's class of freshmen, and I look at the worst teams in the NBA, and I'm like, okay, what team can this guy come in and crack their rotation? Like, can you come in and crack Houston's rotation if you're a guard? It's going to be tough.
Scoot.
I mean, Scoot, yeah, but if you're not Scoot and you're, in a fair, like, I mean, people may not like KPJ, but you got to beat him out. Jalen Green,
right.
he's going to start.
And you see, what's his name hasn't been able to crack that rotation. Ty Washington.
Ty Washington. Yeah. So you need a vet that's going to be able to basically take a kid and say, hey, you're not playing, but just because you're not playing doesn't mean they're not watching you. You need to be the first at practice.
Let me ask you this. So, okay, speaking of that, and we talked about Mike Conley and we talked about Rudy Gay. Now you see that all of a sudden there are minutes available for Ochai in Utah, and he's making the most of it. Now, with no OGs on that team, is he staying ready? Now, granted, he was a 4-year guy at Kansas, so maybe there's, more maturity. But even then, I mean, when 22 is still 22, but like,
Would a
you have to.
19-year-old in the same situation have been
No,
ready?
exactly. But at the same time, you have to think that the Conleys, the Rudy Gays are telling him like, hey man, stay ready, man, stay ready. And you see, he came in against Cleveland the other day, knocking down shots. So
Yeah.
it's like, and you going into the season, you thought he was going to play a lot sooner, but it's just not how Utah's moving right now. But here we are in January, and he's ready and he's making shots.
Yeah, I agree, man. I just think that a lot of times with this team building, you're just throwing young guys out there and having a culture. You would think I mean, there's been so many examples. I've heard some crazy horror stories about those Wizards teams that had JaVale and Nick Young and Gilbert Arenas. I had someone tell me that played on the team was like, man, when I got traded there, it was like guys were going out every night. They were wrestling in the locker room. They were just having fun. It's like we had a lot of talent, but we didn't have any. We were just wild. And that team underachieved. And, maybe, I mean, Gilbert was Gilbert. Don't sound like any vet would have been able to get to him. But you just think about how that team just kind of underachieved. Well, that wraps up this episode. It's a little bit different. We didn't talk about prospects. We just kind of did our own thing, shifted gears, and just talked about veterans and how important they are for these young guys. And I think like with teams, you're investing in so many 18 or 19-year-olds, and every year you're getting a new 19-year-old. And no business in the world other than sports turns their business over to teenagers. So you need vet leaderships. And so, I look at Houston. I think Houston has, and Houston is, their losing is going to help them get a higher pick. But Houston has more talent than Utah. There's more talent, in my opinion, top to bottom, or just natural talent. But Utah's vets, I think, are the biggest difference. And maybe the city, there's a lot of stuff to get into in Houston that you kind of can't get into. But even Detroit has a better plan for team building than Houston.
I agree. I would say Orlando does too.
Yeah, Orlando. I mean, you probably want to know, why haven't they traded Terrence Ross? In my opinion, Terrence Ross must be that vet that they decided to keep around. Well, that wraps up this episode. Big shout out to each and everybody that has made this podcast a success. And your first listen of the day. Now for your second listen, check out the Game to Game podcast. Every moment, every top performance, every result. Locked On Game to Game covers every game from across the NBA with local analysis that only Locked On can deliver. Follow Game to Game on the Locked On NBA podcast, available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. Once again, it's Rafael Barlowe with my brother James, and we are out.